The command post was alive with noise radios screaming, boots slamming, voices snapping orders like lightning. But then the voice in the radio died. It's just like that. Gone. A single line of static swallowed the air, and the room felt suddenly too big, too empty. Men stopped moving. Men who had trained for chaos froze in the quiet, because they knew what silence meant. A broken radio wasn't just a broken tool, it was a broken lifeline. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're rewatching from. I love knowing who's listening. The command post was a temporary maze of sandbags, maps, and cables, set up behind a ridge where the enemy couldn't see. The sun had been a harsh white glare all morning, and now it was sinking low, turning the dust into gold. Every breath tasted like grit. At the center of it all was the radio tent, the place where the heartbeat of the mission lived. Inside, a young woman sat on a folding chair, her hands stained with grease. Her name was Mara. She wasn't a sniper. She wasn't a captain. She wasn't even a soldier in the sense that most people imagine. She was a communications technician, one of those people who rarely get noticed until the moment they are absolutely needed. And right now, she was needed. She'd been trained to fix things that other people couldn't. Radios, wiring, broken signals. Things that could save lives if you knew how to bring them back to life. She stared at the dead radio like it had betrayed her. The radio's internal wiring was exposed like a wound. The antenna was bent. The battery was dead. Every technician in the tent had already checked the obvious things, and every obvious thing had failed. Mara felt her throat tighten. She hated the feeling of helplessness. It wasn't the kind of helplessness you could fight with a weapon. It was the kind that forced you to watch. The room was tense. The men were quiet, but their eyes were loud. They stared at her, waiting. Some looked annoyed. Some looked afraid. A few looked angry. A broken radio in a war zone is more than a tool. It's a promise that someone will answer you. Mara's hands trembled as she opened the radio's casing. Dust floated in the sunlight, drifting like tiny ghosts. Her mind flashed to the last time she had been here, fixing a radio while bullets rattled outside. She had always told herself she could handle anything. But the truth was she was terrified. Not of the enemy, of failing. She worked quickly, but her movements were careful, like a surgeon. Her fingers moved with a steady confidence that came from long hours of practice. Still, she couldn't ignore the feeling that every second mattered. The captain was watching. Captain Elias, a man with a calm face and eyes that never seemed to blink, stood just outside the tent. He had the kind of authority that didn't need to shout. He simply existed, and the room followed. Mara could feel his gaze like a weight on her shoulders. "Any luck?" he asked quietly. Mara swallowed. Not yet. He didn't push. He didn't scold. He just nodded, as if he understood the invisible battle Mara was fighting. The tent was quiet again, the kind of quiet that made every small sound feel enormous. A pencil dropped. Boot shifted. A breath. A click. Mara found the problem. A thin wire had snapped inside the radio's power line. It was so small it could have been overlooked by anyone who didn't know what to look for. But Mara saw it. She always saw the hidden thing. She picked up a soldering iron. The smell of burning metal filled the air. She steadied her hands and worked. Time slowed. The room seemed to hold its breath. Mara fixed the broken wire, reattached the battery, and sealed the casing. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. She turned the radio on. Nothing. Her stomach dropped. She tried again. The radio crackled small at first, like a whisper. Then the voice came through, clear and steady. "Command, this is Alpha. We are in position. Pete, we are in position." The tent erupted into motion. Men shouted. Boots slapped the ground. The room filled with a sound that was almost laughter relief, that felt like joy. But the biggest reaction was from Captain Elias. He stood in the doorway, and for a moment, his face was unreadable. Then he reached up and saluted. A salute in that moment was not just respect, it was recognition. He wasn't saluting a rank, he was saluting a skill. A life saved, a mission restored. The command post fell silent again. Againly this time it was not the silence of fear, it was the silence of awe. Mara's hands shook. She hadn't expected anything like that. She had fixed the radio because she had to, because the people out there needed her too. But she felt something else too. Something like pride. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind that comes when you realize your work mattered. When the last radio message faded, Captain Elias approached her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply placed his hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. It was a moment of human connection in the middle of war. A reminder that every role matters, and that courage isn't always about charging forward. Sometimes it's about staying calm when everything is breaking around you. Because the battlefield isn't only fought with bullets. It's fought with patience, skill, and the willingness to be the one who fixes what others can't. Because the world doesn't just need heroes. It needs people who can make the world work again. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the command post began to move once more. And somewhere in the dust, a technician who had been overlooked for too long finally understood the truth. Kindness, skill, and quiet courage can turn a battlefield into a story of hope.